Hello, welcome to SQL Bits 2020. This is my view frequently when I'm working at my desk. Unfortunately, my office companion is not so great at coding. My name's Rob Sewell, and today we're going to talk about collaborating with open source repositories. How to start collaborating with GitHub repository. My name's Rob Sewell. I'm a consultant and a data platform and cloud and data center management MVP. If you wish to get in touch with me, please do. My Twitter is the best way to get in touch, and it's at SQLDBA with beard. So let's talk about open source repositories and GitHub and collaboration. These are things that I think are really important for you to do. But people will often say, why? Why are we going to be doing this? What is the benefit for me? I can honestly say that when I started collaborating with open source repositories, I had no idea what I was doing. But the skills that I've learned along the way, I have used within my professional career time and time again. And it's become a blur as to where I learn things and where I implement them. Whether it's learning new methods of coding with PowerShell or learning how to deploy artifacts with CI/CD, all of that learning has come through working with open source repositories. You're going to learn some new language here, but that's okay. Seek had to learn what the neighbors were like. He didn't understand about ducks. Today, you're going to learn about GitHub, about source control, about push and pull and fork and clone and pull requests. New language that you might have heard about, but you might not have actually interacted with yet. It's okay. There's plenty of people out there who are willing to help. Everybody wants you to succeed. Because I had a picture of Seek, I also had to have a picture of Destroy. And Destroy likes to learn too. So in 20 minutes, let's look at how we can learn how to collaborate with a GitHub repository and set you off on that path so that you too can start catching leaves. First place we're going to start is on my blog. So if you go to blog.robsewell.com and hit this search button, the open search is already there. There's a blog post called How to Fork a GitHub repository and Contribute to an Open Source Project. And this is the place where you're going to find everything that I'm going to talk about today. All of the information is going to be stored here so that you can find it. So let's have a look at the steps that we're going to take. So we're going to start with the original repository, wherever that may be, whichever one it is that you decide to choose. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to fork the repository. And what a fork does is it creates a copy of the repository at that moment in time and places it in the place that you decide. We're talking about GitHub. So what you're going to do is you're going to fork a repository from the open source project, and you're going to fork it into your own GitHub repository. Once you've done that, all online, we then need to clone the repository. And that means bringing it down into our laptop or our desktop onto our own machine that we're going to use, so that we have a local copy of our repository that is the same as the remote copy that we have cloned from. The next step is to make a branch. So as you learn about source control and branching, you'll begin to understand that there are many, many very strongly held views about how to do a branching strategy for your application. Right now, we're not interested in that. We only want to just add some value to a repository. So we're just going to make a single branch, and we're going to make that from the main branch that's within the repository. Once you've cloned the repository to your local machine and you've made a branch, the next step is to do some coding. Now, maybe you're a bit worried. I don't have the skills. I don't know how to do this. It's all very difficult. It's okay. You do have the skills. You can learn how to do it. And also you can ask other people who are already contributing to that repository or to other open source repositories using that language. How do I do this? How do you think we should code that? Is this a good way of doing it? Or maybe the change that you're going to make is not on the code at all, but is within the documentation. Maybe the repository has a wiki. Maybe you've seen something in docs.microsoft.com that doesn't quite fit with your experience and you think the wording could be better. This is the process that you're going to use to be able to help update that web page, to make it better for other people that come along after you. It's exactly the same. Or maybe your knowledge is in CI and CD and Azure DevOps pipelines, and you want to make an improvement to the process that's deploying the changes for this repository. That's cool. You can just code that within your branch. So we've made our changes to our local branch. And the next step that we have is to push our branch. We're going to push our changes back up to the remote repository. This is good to make sure that we don't lose them, and also to sync those two local and remote repositories. Now, at this point, we're here, and we have only got our changes within our own forked repository. So the next thing to do is to create a pull request. What the pull request is going to do is going to say, hey, I've got this great code over here that fits this problem. And I'd like it to be put into your repository, the open source maintainers repository. Obviously, we're not just going to say, yeah, sure, just throw some code in and make some changes. There'll be other things that will go on with that. But the pull request is the method of bringing that code and putting it into the original repository. That's it. It's as simple as that. It's a really easy process once you understand all of this new language. Just like the kittens, there's all of this new stuff around, and you're going to get distracted by a butterfly that flies past your nose. But that's okay. Gradually, you'll get used to it, and it'll become normal and usual. So let's have a look at an open source repository. If we come to the bottom of this blog post, there are some suggestions of open source repositories that you might find interesting. Let's have a look at DBA tools. When we get to DBA tools, we'll find a contributing markdown file. And that's going to give us the information about how we like to have contributors and the things that we expect them to do. So there's some things here about Here's our new documentation site. This is how to contribute new commands. It's how we have a guide to fix bugs. And also some guidelines, some rules for DBA tools. This is how we refer to parameters. This is how variables should be defined. So it's the things that we expect to have. And formatting, tabs versus spaces. Each open source repository will have their own rules and guidelines for that. DBA tools also asks about tests and some instructions about code coverage and how AppVeyor is working. Go and have a look at the open source repository and understand how these collaborations want you to add value to them. We're going to have a look at ADS Notebook. So ADS Notebook has a contributing MD and it says, here we go, help me. It's literally all I've got in there. So if you remember, our first step was to fork our repository into our own GitHub account. So this is sat at SQL Collaborative /ADS Notebook. And if we come to here, we can see we've got a fork button and it says, where should we fork ADS Notebook? Now I'm in a number of organizations, but I'm going to pick my own SQL DBA with a beard GitHub repository. And GitHub said, great, thanks for that. Just going to do some work for a minute. There you go. And as you can see, we're now in SQL DBA with a beards account, and it's still called ADS Notebook. It's called the same thing. And it tells you it was forked from SQL Collaborative's ADS Notebook. So we've forked our repository. We've got a copy of the code at this moment in time in our own account. And it says this branch is even with SQL Collaborative main. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to take this copy that's on the remote and bring it down onto our own local machine. Click on the green code button and it says, here you go, do you want to clone? We're going to copy this URL. And then I'm going to open Visual Studio Code. You can also do this in Azure Data Studio, follow exactly the same steps. Now, you need to press F1 and then type the word clone. And it comes up, it says git clone. Now, if you don't have git clone coming up, or if you haven't got git installed, then go to your favorite browser and look for the download for your operating system to install Git. It's a simple download and an installation of an application. We're going to hit enter and it says provide a repository URL, or you can also clone straight from GitHub, but we've copied the URL. So we're going to hit paste that in and hit enter. And it says, where would you like this code to live locally? Oh, okay, thank you very much. I am going to put it in this cloned fork folder that I've got. It doesn't matter. I would think about making sure that you organize where your code lives, but ultimately it's just a directory on your machine. So we're going to choose that. And then down at the bottom, it's going to say, I'm cloning the Git repository. And it did it very quickly. And it says, would you like to open the clone repository? Well, yes, please. Actually, I would. I'm going to open my repository. Now that I've got my repository open, I have a local copy of my own fork of the repository. And now I could add some new code. So the first thing we wanted to do was to create a branch in Azure Data, in Visual Studio Code and Azure Data Studio. We can click on this branch button down at the bottom and it says create a new branch. So yes, please, I'd like to create a new branch and we're going to call it update contributing, because we noticed that there wasn't anything there. I'll press enter. And now Visual Studio Code has changed to my update contributing branch. The reason that we keep a branch is so that if I make a complete mess of it, doesn't matter. I can go back to my original main branch, and then I can create a new branch and we can carry on. So look at the contributing markdown, and we're going to just make a couple of changes. So we'll say ABS notebook contributing. This is a contributing markdown of our project. Go ADS notebook. Great to have you here. Please help Rob make this better so that he can spend more time with the kittens. Okay, and we save our changes. Maybe this is updated code, maybe it's updated documentation. Once we've saved this file, we've then got in our source control, so there's one, got a change. And see what change we've got. We can even have a look at the differences, see what the comparison is with those files. And now we're going to put a commit message. So the commit message should be, why have I made this change? Because the file was still default. Oops, default. Let's have default. Because I want my open source maintainer to understand the change that I've made. Control enter, and it says, would no staged changes to commit. Would you like to automatically stage? Because I've just got one file, I'm going to say yes. But if you've made changes to numerous files and perhaps for different things, you may want to just split your commit messages up so that they reference the thing that's been changed. If all 5 files were for the same reason, no problem with having them all in the same commit message. So we'll say yes. And then down here, we've got a little publish changes button that's pointing up at the cloud. Because now we have our new branch locally, but we don't have it remotely. So we're going to press that button, and it's just going to spin round and round. And it's going to push those changes up to our repository. Thank you. Now you've committed your changes. You're starting to understand how we can contribute to our open source repositories. If we go back to GitHub, we're in SQL DBA with a beard, and it says your updating contributing branch, add recent pushes, compare and pull requests. So if we click this button, actually click the button, there we go. And it says, open a pull request. So this is the base repository, SQL Collaborative. It's where we would like to make those changes. And this is our forked repository. And we're comparing our branch update contributing with the main branch of the base repository. Make sure you check the contributing guidelines. In DBA tools, you should be comparing against the develop branch. Other repositories will have different guidance. So then we're going to give a title to our request because the contributing file was still default. Well, it would, no, we won't say would be better. We're just going to say, I have added some more information. I think this makes it look better. Remember, it's quite often just a single person behind an open source repository, and they might have lots of information coming at them. So when you create a pull request by hitting this green button, please wait and give the person who maintains the repository time to understand, have a chance to go and have a look at it. Okay, I'm going to put my maintainer's hat on for a second. And here I am. I've got an email saying I've had a pull request in this repository. Here's the pull request. I can come and have a look at. And I can see that SQL DBA with a beard wants to merge a commit into the main branch from this. And I can go through and have a look and see what commits have been made, what changes have been made. Maybe at this point, I might ask for some changes. So I might, we're looking for a reviewer. I might actually come in and say, okay, let's have some information. This is great, but I need more. Now, obviously, I'm doing this to myself, so I can say kind of what I like. I'll hit a comment. And you're going to get some information, and maybe you're going to make some backwards and forwards, because your PR won't automatically get approved first time with everything, especially not if the automatic builds that Rob's created fails for your change. So I'll have to go and investigate that at some point. But assuming that everything works as we expect, then I, as a maintainer, would say merge, and your change will be added to an open source repository. And you would have gone through all of these stages. You would have chosen a repository that you could contribute to and add some value. You would have forked that repository into your own GitHub account, cloned the repository locally onto your machine, created a branch so that your work is separated from the rest of the code, coded your magic feature or fixed a bug or updated documentation or improved the CI/CD or created new tests, whichever it is that you fancy doing. You'll push your branch back to the remote repository. And then you're going to create a pull request back to the original repository and say, hey, I've got this new thing. I've done this work on this code and I think this is better. Here, have a look. And the maintainer or the reviewer might go, yeah, that's really cool, but actually we use uppercase variables, or we use tabs and not spaces, or whatever it is. Sometimes there's some discussion backwards and forwards. And then once both of you are happy with the pull request, the maintainer will approve it and merge it into the branch. And you will have added value to open source code. Thank you very much. My name's Rob Sewell.